Welcome back for Keeper of the Lost Cities Lodestar, chapters 59 and 60. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a chapter. And today, let me know if you have any questions you want me to ask, because I am honestly starting to run out. Chapter 59. The ogres had almost won. Somehow they'd seemed to know that Sandor wouldn't be there. They'd also positioned themselves throughout the pastures to make sure no one had anywhere to run, and they'd known to wait for the afternoon feeding, where everyone would be carrying buckets instead of weapons. They'd even prepared for Grady's ability, blocking his mesmerizing with a special ogre-sized version of the thinking caps they used at Foxfire during exams. And when Adeline tried to conjure up weapons from the stockpile, the ogres had already been ready to disarm her, as if they'd known exactly what she would do during the battle. Braille and Caddock had fought bravely and fiercely, but there had been 10 ogres. Within minutes, Braille was dead. Caddock and Lady Caden seriously injured, and Grady and Adeline were preparing themselves to be taken. "Verdi's the one who saved us," Grady said, his lips twitching with a dark smile. "She charged through her pasture's fences, grabbing one of the ogres with her teeth and trampling another. The remaining ogres rushed to help, and I'll spare you those details, but let's say Verdi got herself a nice taste of ogre meat, and she didn't enjoy it." "And she's okay?" Sophie asked. "They didn't—" "She took some hard blows," Grady admitted. "She'll probably limp from now on. She also lost a few teeth. But several gnomes stayed at Havenfield to care for her, and I was able to get pressure on her wounds as soon as the final ogre fled." "Coward!" Sandor spat, squeezing the handle of his sword so hard the skin on his fingers looked ready to rip. "I know," Grady said, "and it was the ogre who murdered Brielle. He'll have a scar across his chest from her final attack. If I ever see him again—" "You won't," Sandor promised. "We have hunters who will find him and shred him." Sophie tried not to picture it, but her imagination ran wild. Elwyn saved her from her nightmares when he crawled out of the earth, carrying 2 overfilled satchels. His tousled hair and crazy glasses gave him a bit of a mad scientist air, but within minutes his remedies had color flooded back into Lady Cadence's cheeks, and Caddock's eyes fluttered awake. "I'll need to move them to the healing center at Foxfire to clean them up and set a few broken bones," he told Lur and Mitya. "Can you guys rig something up to help us transport them through the earth? I'm afraid they might be too weak for a light leap." The gnomes got to work, weaving fallen branches into nest-like cots. While they built, Elwyn turned his attention to Grady and Adeline. They each needed a few dozen elixirs, and Grady had 2 cracked ribs. But Elwyn promised Sophie they'd make a full recovery. "I'm fine," she told him as he snapped his fingers and flashed a blue orb around her face. "I wasn't there. I'm checking for signs of shock. You're borderline, so I want you to take these." He handed her 2 vials filled with thick lime green syrup. "Not sedatives, I promise." "And not weird happy elixirs, like the ones you gave me after Alden's mind broke?" she checked. "Nope. Think of these like a security blanket for your nerves. They'll take away some of that chill." He traced a finger down the goosebumps on her arms. "And slow your heart to its normal rate. That's it." Sophie chugged them, barely registering the honey-like taste as warmth rippled through her. "You want me to check on Verdi?" Elwyn offered. "If it won't affect Caddock and Lady Cadence's treatment," Adeline told him. "And only if you can handle being around a few dead bodies," Grady added. Elwyn cringed. "How many are there?" 9 ogres, Adeline whispered, "and Brielle." Everyone bowed their heads at the name, and Sandor punched the tree again. "Here," Elwyn said, reaching for Sandor's bleeding knuckles. "Do you have an imparter on you?" Grady asked him. "I need to hail the council and let them know what happened." "I can't believe they had thinking caps," Elwyn mumbled, "and that the caps blocked mesmerizing." "The Neverseen must have designed them," Adeline whispered. Elwyn nodded. "No one knows how to take down an elf better than an elf." "Which is why you're no longer safe in the Lost Cities," Sandor announced, clenching his newly bandaged hand. "Dimtar won't accept failure, especially for this. This had to be his test to secure his new alliance. "I wouldn't be so sure," Lady Cadence rasped from her newly made stretcher. None of these were members of his personal guard, and none of them wore mark chains. "So he distanced himself from the attack," Sandor snarled. "That's not proof of innocence, only foresight. His next attack will come swiftly. Ogres are expert trackers. We need to move you somewhere even Dimitar would never even dare go." "Where are you suggesting?" Adeline asked. Sandor's voice seemed to deepen as he said, "The best option is Gildenham. The ogres know that entering our capital city would be a declaration of war." "Would Hilda approve our visit?" Grady asked as he rejoined them. "I thought she preferred to keep outsiders to a minimum." "She would never turn away an elven family in need, especially one as important as yours. I'll contact her now and make arrangements." Sandor pulled the triangle gadget out of his pocket and moved to the edge of the clearing to speak with his queen. Sophie, meanwhile, was wondering why no one seemed to be addressing the much scarier question. Now that the ogres had sent 10 soldiers to directly attack an elven family within the boundaries of the lost cities, did that mean the ogres and the elves were at war? Chapter 60. "Leave the diplomacy to the council," Mr. Forkel ordered when Sophie hailed him on her imparter and explained the afternoon's tragedies. "I think we're well beyond diplomacy," she mumbled. "I wouldn't be so sure. Given what Lady Cadence noted about her attackers, I have no doubt King Dimitar will claim that anyone involved acted without his permission, which may even be true." "You're serious?" "Are the Neverseen acting with the council's permission?" he countered. "I know you're angry and afraid, and justifiably so, but we cannot let ourselves be controlled by fear or fury, or rush into any actions that will only cause further death and destruction, not without gathering evidence. So let the councilors investigate, and try not to be surprised if they opt to proceed with the peace summit." Sophie's grip on her imparter tightened. "You really think a treaty is going to stop the ogres from killing innocent people, or coming after my family again?" "It depends on who's giving orders. It's also important to keep in mind that if Dimitar was behind this incident, in some ways that's an advantage. We've been working to prevent the ogres in Neverseen from aligning, and this guarantees it. Vinton will be livid the ogres failed, and King Dimitar will be furious over losing so many warriors." The words would have been much more comforting if Sophie weren't picturing Brielle's bloody, broken body. "Right now, the most important thing is to get you and your family to safety," Mr. Forkel added gently. "I agree with Sandor that Gildenham is the wisest option. Do you need me to bring you a crystal to leap there?" "Queen Hilda has already sent her chariot," Sandra said over Sophie's shoulder. She'd forgotten he was eavesdropping. "The drivers will be here as soon as they retrieve Brielle." His voice faltered at the name. "My deepest sympathies," Mr. Forkel told her. Brielle was an incredible warrior. "One of the best," Sandor agreed, looking desperate to punch something again. "When will she be presented in the Hall of Heroes?" Mr. Forkel asked. "Horrification will begin as soon as she's brought to Gildenham. The presentation should be tomorrow. I'll let the council know to release their goblin regiments for the ceremony," Mr. Forkel promised. "Actually, Queen Hilda will be ordering them to remain with their assignments," Sandor told him. "She believes it would be unwise to leave the lost cities vulnerable. Dimitar could take advantage." Mr. Forkel blinked. "That's incredibly generous of her." "It is," Sandor said. "But now more than ever, we must work as allies." Sophie wasn't familiar with some of the terms they'd been using, but she assumed they'd been talking about the goblins' version of a funeral. "Can I go to the presentation?" she asked. "Or is it a goblins-only thing?" "Presentations are generally only attended by our people," Sandor told her. "But Brielle is the first in the elven regiments to be lost in a battle, so it might be good to show the public that the elves do not take her sacrifice for granted. I'll raise the matter with the Queen." "We'd like to go as well," Grady called, from across the clearing, where he sat with Adeline, both of them so weary they could barely move. "I'll ask Della to include something gold for each of you to wear when she packs up the satchels we'll be sending," Mr. Forkle told them. "Would you like us to send your imp to keep you company, Miss Foster?" "No, I think it'd be easier for Iggy to stay with Biana." Sophie doubted the goblins wanted a tiny purple poof causing havoc in their city. "Please let me know once you've settled in Gildenham," Mr. Forkle told her, "and I'll keep you updated on any developments. And, Miss Foster," he touched the screen of his imparter like he was trying to reach across the distance between them, "I'm so relieved that you and your parents are well. Please keep it that way." His image flashed away, and Sophie stared at the blank screen, trying to figure out what to say, what to do. She was on her way to sit with Grady and Adeline when the ground started to rumble. "Don't be nervous," Sandor said as she jumped back, preparing for another ogre attack. "It's just Twinkle." With a name like Twinkle, Sophie definitely wasn't prepared for a 50-foot snake to burst out of the ground, especially a 50-foot snake strapped with some sort of golden harness, lined with hundreds of golden wheels. The contraption ended in a carriage that looked like a giant golden egg, covered in intricate patterns and symbols. The snake's scales shimmered with flecks of gold, silver, and pink as it slithered into a tight coil, coming to rest with the egg carriage right in front of them. "Twinkle is a Titanoboa," Sandor explained, "and she's been trained to guide the royal chariot through the imperial pathways. Queen Hilda wants to ensure that Brielle returns to Gildenham with proper honor." In her head, Sophie's brain was screaming, "You chose to take me in a giant snake carriage of doom when we could have light-leaped?" But she'd caught what he said about Brielle arriving with proper honor, and if a monster-sized snake offered any sort of tribute for Brielle's sacrifice, she would ride in the carriage all day, every day, without complaint. A small whimper did slip through her lips, though, when Sandor led them past Twinkle's enormous head. Wow, what an interruption, Oakley. A small whimper did slip through her lips, though, when Sandor led them past Twinkle's enormous head. The massive snake could have swallowed her whole without needing to unhinge her jaw, and her forked tongue kept flicking around Sophie like she was trying to take a taste. A seamless door in the carriage slid open, and two goblins greeted Sandor with a solemn nod as Sophie and her parents climbed in. There were no seats inside, just a massive golden coffin and narrow spaces to stand on either side. "Hold on to this," Sandor said, grabbing one of the golden ropes tied to the top of the carriage and handing it to Sophie. Grady and Adeline copied him, coiling the rope around one of their wrists and clinging to Sophie with their other, as the two new goblin bodyguards shouted a command to get Twinkle moving. The carriage had no windows. The only light came from a glowing golden orb set into the ceiling, and the ride was so smooth and steady it almost felt like they were floating. A low rumble reverberated through the silence, and Sophie counted the passing seconds, surprised when they came to a stop after only 539. "I didn't realize we were so close to Gildenham," Sophie said. "We weren't. A team of technopaths helped engineer Twinkle's chariot to allow her to move at supersonic speeds. We'll embark after they carry out Brielle." One of the goblins they'd traveled with slid the door open, flooding the carriage with buttery sunlight as he and the other goblin lifted the coffin. Sophie focused on the view, her first glimpse of the goblin city, where intricate gilded buildings had been built across the rolling green foothills. The architecture had an almost fragile feel, with so many arches and pillars and windows and balconies that they looked ready to float away into the breeze. A golden lake shimmered in the distance, flowing into a river that shone like the sun. And at the top of the highest peak, a golden step pyramid loomed against the horizon. "That's Queen Hilda's palace," Sandor said, following Sophie's gaze. "And once we're out of the carriage, you'll see the Hall of Heroes, where we'll be going for Brielle's presentation tomorrow. The Queen invited you to have dinner with her tonight, but I asked her to give you the night to settle in before facing any formalities. She wasn't offended, was she? Grady asked. If anything, she was relieved. Generally, the night a soldier is lost is a night of reflection for our queen. She only offered because she didn't want to seem an unfriendly hostess. Adeline smiled sadly. Then thanks for declining. We're going to have to rely on you for proper goblin diplomacy. I'll do my best. For instance, as we step out of this carriage and you see the crowd gathered below, it would be considered proper to offer a solemn wave. Crowd? Sophie asked as Sandor slowly exited. Sure enough, when she followed, she could see that Twinkle had brought them to the level of the city, halfway up on the rolling hills, and the golden streets below were lined with goblin warriors who had gathered to see them. Some were shirtless with black pants and weapons like Sandor always wore, but most were adorned with gleaming golden armor. This way, Sandor said, after Sophie gave the crowd what she hoped counted as a solemn wave. He pressed his palm against a flat panel on the center of a golden door set into the mountain. Don't worry, my house is much bigger on the inside. He wasn't wrong. Not only was the house at least 10 bedrooms, but everything was designed for someone 7 feet tall. All the doorknobs were closer to Sophie's shoulder height, and she had to stand on her tiptoes in order to climb onto one of the chairs. And it was so fancy! Shimmering rugs, tasseled curtains, intricately carved furniture, all in the same warm yellow tone. I'm assuming there's a reason everything's gold, Sophie said. Sandor nodded. Gold is a weak metal, but we are strong. We don't build houses or walls for protection. We build them to have a place that inspires us, a place worth defending. Well, that's incredible, Adeline told him. I've heard stories of the Golden City, but I'd never pictured it quite so spectacular. Sandor wandered to one of the windows. I wish you were here under better circumstances, but I suppose it's nice to be home. Della should be here with your clothes and things soon. In the meantime, I'll show you to your rooms. Grady and Adeline were given their own suite at the end of the longest hall, and Sophie grabbed one more hug before following Sandor to where she'd be staying, in a room with a gilded 4-poster bed covered in golden linens. She knew she should probably rest, but as soon as she was alone, she did something more important. I don't care if this is a bad time, she transmitted. We need to talk. Now. She repeated the call at least a dozen times before Keith's voice rushed into her head. Are Grady and Adeline okay? Fury churned as fast as the queasiness in her stomach. I take it that means you knew? Not until a couple of hours ago, when Finton got a hail from King Dimitar. So the king is behind this? She rubbed the spots under her ribs where the tangled emotions used to be. She'd released them when she inflicted, leaving her chest cold and empty. I don't know, Keith said. All Finton told us is that Dimitar will not be our ally. I've been trying to find a way to reach you ever since. I'm so sorry. Don't, Sophie interrupted. Brielle's dead. Sorry isn't going to change that. Okay, I don't know who Brielle is, but she was Grady's bodyguard. That's how close the ogres came to catching him. And you were supposed to warn us. I did warn you. I just didn't know the specifics. I know, but that's the thing neither of us wanted to admit. If you can't give the specifics, everything you're doing is worthless. The words hit him harder than she'd expected, but she wasn't taking them back. I'm doing the best I can, he told her. Maybe, but it's not enough. Half the time you can't even talk during our check-ins. This isn't working. I know it feels that way, but I'm seriously so close. Even if that's true, you know what? We're getting close too. We've already figured out what the symbol means, and Gethin gave us a big clue on how to use it. What are you saying? I'm saying we're coming after the Neverseen with everything we have. Bad idea, Foster. Seriously, so bad. I don't care. They tried to take my family from me, and I'm not going to sit back anymore. So you better find a way to get out now, Keith, before you get caught in the crossfire. That concludes Chapter 60. Come back tomorrow for 61 and 62. Bye!